Hi, I'm Mike Thompson. Well, the pool is open, the weather's getting better. This is basically day one. It's finally clear enough, so I'm going in. This episode, we're going to talk about weight. Okay, I think that's long enough. Well, I was looking around and weights are relatively expensive. And so I'm always doing different sorts of things in the pools and stuff, so I built a few different types of weights to suit my needs. The first is your traditional soft weight. By doing it myself and using some lead shot I already had, I saved a ton of money. This is a 5-pound soft weight. I got some vinyl coated material online. Turns out this same stuff is available in your Scuba section at your local hardware store. Of course, it's gonna come in black because, it's for screen doors and things. But this is the same stuff. I got it in orange. On the off chance it ever, I lose it, I should be able to see it because it's orange. So that's basically all I did, was sew 3 seams and made 2 5-pound soft weights. Because soft weights, are just a little more comfortable when your jacket inflates and things than hard weights are in the integrated weight pockets. So I've got 5 pounds, 1 1/8 ounces of lead shot here in this bag. That little extra bit accounts for the buoyancy of this mesh. Now, so what I'm going to do here is make a tube of some sort. I cut that at 10 inches so that this is 5. That'll allow me a little bit of overlap so that the tube, of course, is smaller and will fit inside the weight pocket. Now, I'm not exactly sure what length to make this, so for this prototype, I'm going to cut it long. Let's say maybe 10 inches long, too. That way I have plenty of room to decide what the heck I'm going to do. Because here's the volume of 5 pounds of lead shot. So obviously it fits within a 10-inch slot, but I don't know what my end closures are going to be just yet. So I think I will cut this first piece at 10 inches square. So let me do that. These might be small enough, and with that upholstery thread and a dense enough stitch, this just might sew directly without having to put a piece of nylon tape on it. Let me go see. Okay, let's lock it off here. And I'm going to cross into this other stitch to make sure that this corner is nice and dense. And apply a lock stitch here and cut it off. Oops. All right, that is pretty solid. So now I'm going to turn this sucker inside out, hopefully. Yeah, that's a pretty darn good stitch. Looks nice too. Okay, now the key element, of course, is the closure. What I really don't want to do is have an external stitch, but I'm probably going to have to. I don't see any way around it. What I'll probably end up doing is folding the bag in on itself, like so, half of a, one little bit, so that the edge at least is a rounded edge, like so, and then I will sew all over all 4 layers there. Of course, the thing to do now, though, is I have to figure out exactly where to apply my closure. So I think it's time to fill it with the shot. I can't sew it. I don't want to have to deal with 5 pounds of shot on the machine, and it's going to bulk it up to where it won't be able to get under the foot very well. So what I think I'm going to have to do is, well, no, if I'm going to stitch it closed, the shot has to be in there, doesn't it? It's just going to have to be a little longer than I would like, because I have to allow room for the shot. If I bunch it all up, the foot's going to have to be here. So I'm going to have to just go a little bit further than I would like. So I'm going to go ahead and fill it with shot and see where the shot comes up to. I've got my shot in here. I've got it padded down to the thickness I want, and I would really like it to be 7 inches long. So I'm going to mark here on this piece here this is where I want to close it up. Or where I want to fold it so that it closes. Okay, let's try this. Okay, so then when I stand it up, you can see my shot only comes up to here, but my closure's here. So I've got plenty of room, hopefully, to sew this thing shut. Now, if I want it to be this long ultimately, my fold has to be at least a ½ inch to get under the presser foot. So I need to cut it about here. So I'm gonna do that. All right, that folded over pretty well. The stitch is pretty darn thick. I'm not sure how that's gonna work when the needle gets to there, so I'm gonna do that area last. That way I have enough to be able to pull through and do this. Okay, to the sewing machine. So I've got a little bit of a dilemma. How to keep the shot down near the bottom of the bag while I do this. Ideally, the needle would be right here, you know, so I could just run it along like this. And gravity would be in my favor the whole time. But it isn't. I guess I could pin it. That's what I'll do. I'm gonna run some pins here to make a temporary dam, essentially. I'll be right back. I'm gonna kind of weave them together here so that they don't... Okay, that should be a sufficient dam. Oh, my fabric came unfolded here a little bit. Make sure that I'm all on the same row. There, yeah, that's good. And that stayed in place pretty well. All right, hey, that worked, look at that. All righty, foot up. I'll give it the same margin that I had before. Half done. This end part here is going to be really tough, so I'm going to have to pull through because it is not going to want to go. All this material and stitching here at the end is almost a ¼ inch thick. We're going to turn our speed all the way down. We're going to take it one stitch at a time. And we're just going to okay. I'm going to back up. Actually, I'm going to lock it right there. There we go. Last pin. Alrighty. Oh, I like that. Oh, I like that. Yes, I do. Boom. A 5-pound soft weight. Too simple, you say? Okay, well, let's step it up a notch. Then there's this thing, a 20-pound piece of concrete, which is still in its form because it's still curing. This is day 4, I believe, and concrete takes about 28 days really to achieve its full strength. This is obviously for setting on the bottom of the pool, and you can either hang on to it, or we can tether things that would rather float to it. We've got embedded steel cables. I got 4 of these bad boys. It took a whole 80-pound bag of Sackcrete. So let me show you how I did this one. Oh, wow. I raided my wife's masonry measuring supplies because I couldn't find mine. It's always better to mix concrete by pouring the water in first. And 80 pounds of this Sackcrete will do the job. So I start mixing it here with this mixing paddle on my Bauer drill before I hand it off to my dedicated mixing team. These guys are top-notch. They're on the ball. And they make a heck of a concrete mix. Ollie doesn't really do a whole lot. He kind of just observes. And then we fill these forms that we had left over from the swing set footings. We fill them to about halfway. These are 8 inches in diameter. And then once we get them halfway, I tamp it down with this little piece of plywood I had left over. Get in every little non-corner. And then with these loops of wire I made, I just crossed them over themselves one time and bent the ends down about 1 inch to keep them from pulling back out of the concrete once it's set. And make sure they're centered here. Yep, this one came loose. So just loop it over itself like so. And the bent ends also keep the wire from coming undone. Not only gripping the concrete, but they serve two functions. And get this last one in there. And then, of course, I'll fill this up and get it all tamped down in here so that these are nice and straight and centered. And then we'll fill the whole thing with concrete. When these are done, each of these is going to weigh right at about 20 pounds. So the 80-pound bag worked out great. And then let them set up. Still too simple, you say? All right, let's step it up another notch. How about some hard weights? 3-pound weights are kind of my bread and butter. I've got 2s and I've got a bunch of 3s. So let's make some hard weights. It is hard. That's why they're called hard weights. But check this out. So I started in SolidWorks with just this simple extrude. You can see it's just kind of a contoured, slightly concave, convex rectangle. And then I filleted all my corners, like so, make it nice and smooth. And then I did an extruded cut here on the top plane. It's a double convex lens, essentially. And kind of just like so, nothing too fancy. And then filleted that to make it nice and smooth, and mirrored it across here. And then I just played with the size of these cuts to kind of get my weight right. I went up here and evaluated the mass properties until it said 3 pounds. And of course you can see my material properties here are set to lead. Then I created this plane tangent to the front so that I could cut out this number 3 here, because all weights have their weight stamped into them. So like so, you can see the number 3 there inset just a little ways. And then I had to fillet those corners to make them nice and smooth. Otherwise, they're not going to cast properly. Cut that little corner off there. It was a little sharp, so I had to cut that little corner in the 3. And so then I extruded this surface right down through the center, because that's going to be my parting plane for my 2 halves of my mold. And if we look at it on this, you can see here, there's 1/2 of a weight. If we look at it through the middle here, this is where you can see the actual contour of the 2 slots that a belt might pass through. Now I have integrated weights, so I don't need these slots, but I put them there just in case. And then I extruded a giant box around it. This is going to be the actual mold that I'm going to cast. And then using the combine with the subtract feature, I was able to create a cavity, like so, a negative space where my weight once was. And if you look at it here in cross-section, you can see how it goes. Looks pretty neat. If we spin it around here, we can see the 3 stamped in there, just like so. And then the slots for the weight belt stop. And then we continue on up into our block. So that's going to be that. But, of course, we have to separate this into 2 pieces, because otherwise we'll never be able to make it work. But we also have to allow a way to get the lead in there. So an extruded cut here for the pouring spout. We can look at it here in cross-section. So 1/2 will look just like that. Well, nearly like that. We still have to cut it to match that contour, which we'll do here in this last step. Like so. And now you can see that curved line that runs right through the center of my weight. Let's hide this, actually. So there. There's the back half of my mold. It looks just like that. How about there we go. And there's the front half of the mold. Pretty neat, huh? Not too many steps either. The hardest part was probably tailoring the weight just right. And so then I 3D printed this and then painted it, filled it with some spackle, and then gave it several coats of glossy paint. And then I buried it here in one of my molds. And now I'm digging out the pouring cup and the gating. I didn't paint the back side, that's why this is still blue. This side there, as you see, it's real shiny. That was printed on the print bed. And there's my orange and my gating. This will look pretty good, I think. That screw in there helps me remove it, and time to pour. Yep. All right. That is full. Now we just wait and see. Hey, look at that. Well, let's brush that sand out of there and see what that mold looks like. You can see it leaked a little bit around the side. We've got some spillage between the two mold halves, but I can just cut that off. That's no big deal. This thing's still pretty hot. Oh yeah. Just clean this up a little bit, and that's going to be nice, I think. All right. How about that? One more. And here's the other side stamped into the sand, ready to pour. And then this cover, of course, will go on top of that. All right, let's seal it up. This side, of course, leaked as well. I don't know why this is not sticking. The sand must have a tiny little gap in there. But we got to get that off there. You see, we just had a little bit of shrinkage on this one here. My riser wasn't quite big enough, I guess. So, oh well. It's the back side of this mold, so I don't really care. But you can see how far that shrunk down in the center there. So the riser did its job, pretty much. Now we got to cut this off right there at that line. This riser there's not bad. And here it is all cleaned up. The back side, this one didn't have as big a riser on it, so you can see I had a massive amount of shrinkage here on the back. But I didn't really care because this is the back side of the mold. And this was the first one. The second one you saw had much less shrinkage. I don't usually put risers unless I think I'm absolutely going to have to. And on this one I knew I really wasn't, so any bit of shrinkage on that back side where the gating is, no big deal. But look at that side. Perfect. And here are the two gates. You can see the left one's got that shrinkage cavity, whereas the one on the right side just has a tiny little pinhole size because of the riser sticking up the top there. Now they're all cleaned and sanded, and here they are, ready to go. You can still see some of the 3D print layers sticking through, but that shouldn't be a big deal. Now I'm going to preheat this thing along with my lead in the crucible there, because anytime you pour lead into a cold mold, you get lap joints all over the place. So hopefully this preheating worked. And I've got it in my sand here to hold the mold together and, you know, prevent any leaks that might occur. Oop. Well, shoot. Okay, it's full. And moment of truth. Well, that's not bad. Now I did drill and tap. Look at that. I mean, yeah, it's got lap joints on the surface, but I think this is going to work. I'll clean that up. And there's the 3. How about that? That's pretty good. It's definitely a lot shinier than my old ones that are 25 years old. This, though, is lead shot, and it's got 4% antimony in it, so... I did drill and tap these little set screw holes because these are how I'm going to eject the mold. This is where, you know, you got to think ahead of how you're going to get this thing out in case it gets stuck. So I'm going to run a punch down through there and tap this thing out. Let me see if I can get this little sprue off first. Oh, it's going to break off, looks like, so can't use that to pry it out. So I will have to use my little ejection holes. Let's turn this over and we'll smack it out with this punch. Boom. There you go. Piece of cake. And a little bit of heat should seal up that surface real nice, make it look a little prettier. Look how shiny. Wow, that gets really shiny when it starts to turn. I like that. Oop. Don't want to do it too much, or this whole thing will drip back into that mold. Well, okay. I'm happy with that. So here's the pattern, here's the mold, and here's the final piece. Not too bad, huh? And let's see here. And look at that. That's pretty much perfect. Time to get it wet. So there you have it. 3 different types of weights for 3 different things. It's something you can probably do yourself, especially the soft weight and the concrete weight. Just don't be afraid to try. Go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already. I'm Mike Thompson, and thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. I think it's time to get wet.